Welcome to
Shut Up and Listen,
the murder podcast. I'm Scarlet.
And I'm Lucy.
The house that this takes place in belonged to the Andrews family. The mother, she passed away from cancer, leaving her husband to take care of his two daughters. So the girls were Annie and Jessica. And one day, being teenagers, they decided to do a thing to be able to talk to spirits in the basement.
Oh, like with a Ouija board?
Yeah, I don't think it was a Ouija board, but kind of like
similar,
that.
Yeah.
And to be able to talk to their mom, and I mean, really, they didn't really expect it to work. They were just like, why not? But later that night, when they were asleep, they started hearing knocking on the walls. And so they thought it was their mom, and they would knock back. And so basically they'd kind of communicate with her like that.
No.
They would ask the spirit questions, and the spirit would knock back or something. So this continued for several nights until the knocking became so obnoxious that they could not sleep anymore. Then objects began moving around the house. And they began to disappear and just appear in other places.
Yeah.
Things on tables would be on the floor. Furniture would be moved around.
Typical sign that there's a squatter in your house, not a spirit.
Yeah. Eventually Jessica and Annie, they thought that they're being haunted. I don't think they expected anybody to be living in their home. So they thought it was they were haunted, and they thought that it was actually a bad spirit that they had brought into their world, instead of their mom, how they originally had thought. Typical parent stuff where you're oh, that's all fake, that's bullshit, you know, and he thought that they were lying to get attention, because their mom had passed away, and because he worked all the time, to him, it was just it was their kind of way to please.
Okay.
Pay
Even though
attention
there's
to me.
other ways, dyeing your hair.
Yeah, going through teenage.
Wait, what year is this?
This is 1987.
Oh. Yeah, there's so many. You could go with the punk scene and I don't know.
But anyways, so one evening on January 1987, the knocking began again while they were alone at home. The knocking seemed to come from the basement this time, and so they grabbed a knife and they went downstairs to check.
No. I heard. No, don't grab a knife. No, because you'll end up hurting yourself too.
So they went down to the basement with a knife to where they heard the noise, and when they got down there, there was a message that read, "I'm in your room, come find me," and it was written in blood.
What?
So the girls...
Where is this blood coming from?
The girls were so scared, and they finally did the smart thing, which was run to their neighbor's house. They really should have done it.
Yes.
So they waited for their father to arrive. Well, they called him, and they waited for him to arrive, and he came home, and he thought they were making it up, and blah blah blah. And
oh my God,
again, yeah,
that makes me angry.
So then, several weeks later, again, the girls heard the knocking sounds, but this time it was coming from Annie's bedroom.
Oh no.
Yeah. And again, they go to check it out. So this time, the message, again in blood, said, "I'm back. Find me if you can." And again, they ran to the neighbor's house, which should have been done instead of going to check it out. And so, again, the neighbor calls the father while he's at work to come get them, and he tells them, look, I think it's serious. They've been, it's, legit terrified. They're not faking it. It doesn't seem fake. So then Mr. Andrews decides to go check it out this time.
Did he go by himself?
Yeah. So he goes to Annie's room, and now there was an additional message, and it said, marry me. So he keeps looking through the house, and he gets to his room, and there is a man standing in the bedroom wearing his wife's wedding dress. He was wearing makeup, the dress, and a wig, and he had a hatchet with him. And he freaks out, and they start like fighting. But luckily, like, Mr. Andrews is able to get away. And so he runs back out there, you know, and he tells a neighbor, like, get in the house, call the police, blah, blah, blah. And when they call, when the police arrive, they start investigating the house, and they discover that the messages was not in blood, it was with ketchup. So they're searching the house now for clues of how, like, this man entered the house.
But they did catch the man, right?
No, he ran away. Like, when the father and him got into, like, a little fight, they both kind of, like, ran away from each other.
So, he's a psychopath. That's all I gotta say.
So, they're searching the house, and one officer realized that there was a crawl space behind a cupboard. And it was actually built into the wall of Annie's bedroom. So, I mean, I don't know exactly where this...
Yeah, I'm trying to picture it, but it's kind of hard.
So they go in and to the crawl space, and they find a teenage boy curled up inside. What? And he was immediately arrested. So they continue looking through the crawl space, and they discovered that he had been living in their home the whole time, and it tunneled into other areas of the house. And he even had made peepholes in different rooms so that he could, like, observe them.
The man ended up being a teenage boy?
Yeah. And they also found a lot of their clothes that apparently he used to masturbate. Yeah.
Ew.
I know.
He's a psycho.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So, this teenage boy ended up being Danny LaPlante.
Danny DeVito.
Daniel LaPlante, and he realized that they had actually crossed paths like weeks prior to this. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. So LaPlante was 16 years old, and at some point he obtained the phone number of the family's house. And I mean, it was never really confirmed, but they think it was because, you know, like, he had broken into the house prior and, like, got that information.
Yeah.
Or blah, blah, blah. And so when he called them one night and he introduced himself to the girls, he told them that a friend of theirs that went to their school gave them the number, and he described himself as good-looking, athletic, blonde, well-educated, and also that he lived in the area.
Oh, yeah, he lived in the area. He lived in your house.
And so they became really close, and Annie agreed to go on a date with him. So when Danny arrived to the house to pick up Annie, they discovered that he was a total opposite of what he had described. So during their date, Danny discovered that Annie and Jessica had lost their mother to cancer, and Annie said that he was very interested in, like, the death of her mother, like, in a weird way. Like, for example, he'd ask her, like, how she felt the moment she died and how much did she suffer, and it was just weird things. Like, yeah, like a normal person wouldn't ask you that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's actually how Danny ended up meeting them. Back to that night, so, you know, he was taken to a juvenile facility, and he remained there until October 1987. And as soon as he was released, he broke into another home and stole 2 handguns.
What the heck?
On December 1st of that same year, he broke into the Gustafson's family home, and there, what they think is that he didn't expect anybody to be home, but Priscilla, who was 33, and her 2 young children, Abigail and William, were actually home. And Priscilla's husband at the time was at work when Danny broke in. So when Andrew, the husband, returned home, he found Priscilla laying on the bed. She had been sexually assaulted and shot. And he called the police, and when they arrived, they looked through the house and found that the 2 kids were also killed during the break-in. And right away, like, the police knew that it was probably Danny.
Yeah.
And there was a manhunt, and a few towns over, Danny broke into another woman's house and kidnapped her in her vehicle. Fortunately, she was able to escape, but Danny was spotted by somebody else and who had seen his photograph on the news, and they were able to, like, tell the police of, like, his whereabouts. So after 48 hours since the manhunt began, Danny was found hiding in a dumpster. And, you know,
oh my God.
He was inspected, and they actually found a hair of the little girl, like, on him, which officially tied him to the murders.
Yeah.
And thanks to that, they were able to, like, you know, put him in jail for that. A year later, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences for the murder of the Gustafson family.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to Shut Up and Listen, where you shut up and listen.